Okay, gentlemen, we've got a long chapter to go through this morning, chapter 11 in Daniel. Uh, if you've been following the events of the Middle East, this is now becoming quite appropriate. It's almost like it's perfect timing. Uh, this is probably one of the most detailed chapters of prophecy in the entire Bible. We'll go through some things in just a little bit. And the way the world is going right now, if you're following the things in the Middle East, on top of that, I'm at the bank yesterday and just telling the guys that, they're having a hard time keeping tellers. So I managed to talk to the manager as I'm talking to her and finding out why this is going on. She said, well, everything's going on virtual. Then her next statement was, we're going completely cashless. Now that's right out of the Bible. So you take in conjunction everything that's going on in the Middle East right now, the fact that the world admits we're going into a cashless society, and the fact that a number of corporations, even companies now, are doing those inserts into your hands for buying and selling. And so there's a lot of things going on. So we're getting pretty close to that. So chapter 10, chapter 11 is quite lengthy. There's a lot of stuff here, so I don't want to waste too much time. So we're going to pick it up at verse 1, and we're going to go through, we'll just do a few verses at a time because there's a lot of stuff in here. So Daniel chapter 11, we'll do the first 4 verses. Also, okay, this goes back to what's been going on with Daniel. In the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, again, this is the angel Gabriel speaking. Remember chapter 10, Gabriel comes down to give Daniel a vision, and it's the first time he actually understood the vision, but now the angel is going to go into a little more detail. It says, now I will tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia. The 4th shall be far richer than all of them. By his strength, through his riches, he will stir up all against the realm of Greece. Then a mighty king shall rise, who shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others besides himself. This now goes back to Daniel's previous visions and the images of the beast. Okay, particularly it's going back to the winged leopard there and Alexander the Great and his 4 generals. So looking at your notes here, okay, chapter 11 begins Daniel's final vision, which covers the period from Darius the Mede to the Antichrist. So understand that this goes from the time that Daniel is now ministering all the way up to the appearance of Antichrist at the very end of time. In order to really understand all the details of chapter 11, you would just about need a complete course in ancient history. Interestingly enough, it was this 11th chapter with its detailed prophecy that led to the book to be criticized as a forgery in the 3rd century AD. It was stated by Porphyry that history corresponded so closely to Daniel's prophetic revelations and was so precise that this was proof that Daniel was written long after the events have happened. So this is the chapter that caused many people to criticize Daniel. And it is true, the fact that if you don't understand history, you cannot interpret this portion of Daniel. And this is where a lot of mistakes happen, especially with preachers and pastors. In my early years, I did the same thing. I interpreted it in view of what I saw now, rather than what happened in the future. Okay, and as amazing it may be seen, the first 35 verses of the chapter contain 135 prophecies that have been fulfilled literally to the letter without one mistake. That's why it was branded as fate. The chapter is divided neatly into 2 parts. Verses 1 to 35 cover the immediate future, the Medes, Persians, Greeks, and Alexander, the conflict between Egypt and Syria, and then verses 36 to 45 deal with the end of time. The chapter begins with a prophecy concerning the present reign of the Medes and Persians. It says that 4 kings are to follow Cyrus, and the 4th is to be richer and greater than the previous 3, and he will fight against Greece. The record of history bears out this fulfillment. 4 kings followed Cyrus: Pseudo-Smyrna, Darius, Xerxes. It was Xerxes who led the great expedition against Greece. He led the Persian kingdom to its peak power while at the same time leading it into its decline. He used his great riches to gather one of the largest armies in the world, hundreds of thousands, to march against Greece in an expedition that actually failed. The next prophecy concerns Alexander and the Greeks, verses 3 and 4. More than 100 years later, there arose a king in Greece who was mighty, who was an absolute ruler, who did things the way he wanted to, according to his will. It was Alexander the Great. The prophecy states that when he will stand up, or while he was growing strong, his kingdom will be broken and divided into 4 directions. History once again proves that this was fulfilled. Upon his death, the kingdom was divided, went to his 4 generals, not to his family. Within 15 years, his entire family had been murdered. One historian refers to Alexander as the great butcher of men. And so he drank himself to death at the age of 32. His family was then brutally murdered. This prophecy was written in 539 BC, was fulfilled in 323 BC. So verses 1 through 4 have completely been fulfilled historically, down to the T. And we looked at that last week and the week before, the 4 generals of Alexander that inherited everything he owned. And out of those 4 generals, the 2 strongest were Ptolemy and, I just drew a blank here. And, Seleucus, I'm sorry, that's mine. Seleucid dynasty and the Ptolemaic dynasty. Greece and Egypt. And those 2 continually battled back and forth. Okay, go to down to verse 5 and 6. Let's 5, 6. Let's go. You know what? Let me just read it down to 35, and then we'll go back and go through the notes because there's a lot of stuff here. Then the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes. He shall gain power over him, have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. At the end of some years they shall join forces. For the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north and make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand. But she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. But from a branch of her roots one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt with their princes and their precious articles of silver and gold. And he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Then the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his son shall stir up strife, and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. The king of the south shall be moved with rage, go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up. He will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. So basically, I'm going to pause there. What's going on here, and we'll go into detail in a minute here. You've got these constant battles between king of the north and the king of the south. In other words, Greece or Syria and Egypt. And what happens is one becomes strong, defeats the other. Another one builds up and defeats the other. So you've got this ongoing battle, back and forth, back and forth. One wins, one loses. The other one wins, the other one loses. This goes on for year after year after year. Okay, pick it up, verse 14. And in those times, many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also certain violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they will fall. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound, take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or before him. We'll talk about who she is in a bit. After this he shall turn his face to the coastlands, shall take many, but a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end, and with the reproach removed he will turn back on him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. I'm not hope you're catching what here. This is a very, very detailed description of what is going to happen in the future, and everything happened exactly as Daniel pre-wrote it. Okay, you've got to understand that. You say, well, why are we so interested in all this historical stuff? I think God has proven a point. God says, I know the future. And this is why this is so detailed. Okay, so we'll continue on. Verse 21. And in this place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him, and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plan against the strongholds, but only for a time. He will stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. The king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he will not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, many shall fall down slain. Both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but it will not prosper, for the end shall be at an appointed time. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. I'm going to kind of stop right there. Let's go back to our notes here, see if we can kind of catch up here. There it says verses 5 to 35, okay? Occupy the bulk of this prophecy as it deals with the conflict between Egypt and Syria. We must remember that the king of the south refers to Egypt, king of the north refers to Syria. Egypt is identified as such in verse 8, plus the Septuagint, south is always translated as Egypt. Syria is never mentioned by name because at the time of Daniel's prophecy, she did not exist. The following is the exact historical fulfillment of Daniel's prophecies. Remember, this was written hundreds of years before it happened. The details of these prophecies is astounding. Verse 5. Seleucus had fled from Antigonus and temporarily served under Ptolemy. The two combined their strengths to overcome Antigonus, enabling Seleucus to gain control of all Asia Minor to India. In time, he became stronger than Ptolemy, which eventually made them two of them rivals. Seleucus became the most powerful of Alexander's successors. In verse 6, the end of years means after a lapse of several years. For a political reason, there was an intermarriage between Egypt and Syria in hopes that some kind of peace could be established. Ptolemy II gave his daughter Bernice to Antiochus II. This marriage required Antiochus to divorce his present wife, Laodicea. Within a few years, Ptolemy died. Antiochus took back his previous wife, who then in turn murdered him and Bernice, as well as their infant son. It was a political marriage, obviously didn't work. Verses 7 to 9. Out of her roots means out of the lineage of Bernice. The new king of Egypt was now Ptolemy III, the brother of Bernice. In order to avenge his sister, he marched against Syria, taking much of the best land as well as a great deal of wealth. He retained possession of most of Syria until his death. Verses 10 through 19. His sons are the two sons of Seleucus Callinicus, king of the north. Seleucus III died in a battle in Asia Minor, and so Antiochus III attacked Egypt on his own with an army of 70,000 men, was defeated, but he escaped. Even though Ptolemy had won, his kingdom was still in a period of turmoil and unrest. There were forces within Egypt, unsatisfied Jews, who were working against him and aligning themselves with Antiochus. 14 years later, Antiochus had gathered a much larger army. Remember, Antiochus was the king of the north, Syria. With the help of his supporters inside Egypt, he was able to defeat Ptolemy. But Rome, who was watching Antiochus very closely, began to apply pressure so that he was forced to back off a little. In order to make sure that he would still have some control in Egypt, he gave his daughter, her name was Cleopatra, to be the wife of Ptolemy V, in hopes that his marriage would benefit him. But Cleopatra turned her back on her father, sided with Egypt. Antiochus III then turned his efforts into conquering the coast of the Mediterranean and Greece, but was quickly defeated by Rome, exiled to his own home where he later died. I'm going to take a break right there. This is one of those areas where it's easily to become confused, because I was. Does anybody know who Cleopatra was? You ever heard the name? So when you read history, it says the king of the north gave his daughter Cleopatra to marry Ptolemy in Egypt. What do we think? This is Cleopatra. Well, here's the problem. This was happening in 300 and something BC. Cleopatra, who had the affairs and children with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, was in the 30 to 50 BC. So I'm looking at this record and I go, something's wrong here. And plus they mentioned, I was watching a documentary on Cleopatra, and they talked about her mother, was it her mother, or her father was Ptolemy of Egypt. Like, no, her father was Antiochus of Syria. And I talked about her Syrian her brother and Bernice, and I go, no, this is all wrong. Well, okay, again, this goes back to our lack of historical understanding. There were 7 Cleopatras in all. 6 of them reigned in Egypt. The Cleopatra we know was Cleopatra the 6th. And go back in time, I mean, back then, your monarchies, they kept names going and going and going. This here in Daniel is actually Cleopatra the 1st. Actually, the Cleopatra we know, she actually named her daughter Cleopatra. And her whole family was slaughtered later on. So this goes to show you, in the beginning when I first wrote this study guide, I think, oh, everybody knows who Cleopatra was. And suddenly this last summer, I don't know who Cleopatra was. And it brings up the point that if we don't understand history, we can completely misinterpret what the Bible says. You understand what I'm saying here? This is why so many times when you hear preachers or pastors, evangelists, and I've listened to prophetic people talking about the king of the north is Russia, and the king of the south is Egypt or somebody else. That's not true. This is historical right here, okay? This has all happened exactly the way it happened, including the marriages. There was a Cleopatra who was given, right, yeah. And then later on, another Cleopatra became one of the strongest pharaohs Egypt ever knew. So there is this whole history going back and forth. There was this point in time when Syria and Egypt were constant enemies, back and forth. Syria would win, Egypt would win, Syria would win, Egypt would win, back and forth. Finally, they sealed a covenant with marriage back here. So this is the first thing I need to clarify, okay? The notes are correct, just that our definition of Cleopatra is wrong. And so finally I saw that and go, okay, because I couldn't figure out the difference in time. How can Cleopatra be reigning in 300 and some BC and still be alive in 30 BC? She's one old woman. And if you know anything about the history of Cleopatra, there's a new movie coming out starring Gal Gadot, the Wonder Woman. And I'm curious to see what that's going to be, because Cleopatra had quite a reputation. Basically, she slept her way to power. You know, she had a son with Julius Caesar, 2 or 3 kids with Mark Antony. That's just who she was. She used her beauty to rise to power. And so, but let's pick up here. Okay, we'll go down to notes, bottom of 49, verse 20. Antiochus III, the Great, was succeeded by Seleucus IV. Now, we talked a little bit about him last week. Was noted for his oppression and taxation, especially among the people of Israel. Rome was quickly rising to power, was demanding taxes, so Seleucus not only raised the taxes of the people, but he also robbed the temple treasury. But it wasn't very long before he was murdered by his own treasurer, who had hopes of taking his place. Verses 21 to 23 deal with the rise of a man named Antiochus IV. Now here we talked a little bit about him. Antiochus IV, if there ever was an archetype or an antitype of the Antichrist, it is him. And again, there are many, many people say, oh, this is talking about the Antichrist. No, it's not. Antiochus IV, or Antiochus Epiphanes, Epiphanes means manifest. Antiochus IV declared himself to be God. Just like the Antichrist, okay? And the Jews, we'll get in a minute, Jews had a play on that. Instead of calling him Antiochus Epiphanes, they called him Antiochus Epimanes, which means Antiochus the madman. They understood that. So verse 20, he succeeded. Verse 21 to 23 deal with the rise of a man named Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. This vile person, that's quoted here, is the same, the little horn of chapter 8. He did not inherit the kingdom. It rightly belonged to another. He was returning from Athens with the support of Rome and other kings, entered into Syria deceitfully under the guise of peace and goodwill, won the favor of people. One historian called him a man who, when everybody thought he was genial and charming, was covering a deadly hatred. Now, can you see how this patterns the Antichrist? So this was a historical figure that actually happened. He came under the guise of peace, winning everybody's approval. In the end, he kills, pretty much just declares outright war. So this is why a lot of people confuse him with the Antichrist, but he's a perfect type of the Antichrist. Okay, he swept the countryside like a flood, even to the conquering of Egypt. The phrase Prince of the Covenant refers to the high priest, Onias, whom he murdered, replaced by Jason, who gave him a large sum of money in return. But then Antiochus turned on Jason, replaced him with the wicked Menelaus, who then offered him a much more larger sum of money. It had become a contest of power between Antiochus and Ptolemy. Eventually, Antiochus would become the stronger. So let's face it, politics is not always, what do we want to say, truthful. So here we have a time when Antiochus Epiphanes, is a great god, is basically selling the priesthood. So the man who offers me the most money, so he puts Jason in his place, because Jason gives him a lot of money. Then Menelaus comes around, no, I'm going to give you more money. You give me the title. Okay, I'll give you the title now. Of course, in the end, they all end up getting slaughtered. But the point is, his offices were up for grabs, a little bit of payment, just give me a little more. And when you really think about it, you think about all the things that go on in politics, especially in even our own nation, when they talk about, the money, how can a politician come into an office and have a wealth of net worth of very little money, in a few years they're worth millions on a salary that doesn't verify that? Well, good and well things are going on and money is changing hands, and so this is the way politics go. Let's pick it up at verse what did I figured at 28. Okay, let's pick it up at 29 here. Okay. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or latter. For the ships from Cyrus shall come against him, and therefore he shall be grieved, return in rage against the holy covenant, and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. And forces shall be mustered by him. They shall defile the sanctuary fortress. They shall take away the daily sacrifice, and place there the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. You can find a lot of this in the books of Maccabees. And those of the people who understood shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, and by captivity and plundering. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. Some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purge them, and make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time. We'll take a little break there, go back down. Where do we leave off? Let's go verse 27 to 31, right? Where do we leave off in our notes? No. Let's go verse 24. Antiochus was very generous with his money, frequently gave away large sums of money, very expensive gifts, especially to important people, even to the ministers and captains of Egypt. He bought his way into countries by turning the people to him and against the king. When the time came to advance against Egypt, the military leaders had already been bought and paid for. The result was an easy victory. Verses 27 to 31, on several occasions a peace treaty was tried. But because of their intense hatred for one another, it could never be put into practice. So Antiochus returned to Jerusalem with his wealth, only to find that a rumor had been spread as to his death. Now, you got to understand, he's been away for a while, so the rumor started spreading. Antiochus is dead. In revenge, he slew 80,000 people, sold another 40,000 as slaves. He returned to attack Egypt again. This time he wasn't as victorious. While he was preparing to attack Egypt, ships from Rome arrived, ordering him back to his home. Filled with anger, he once again took out his hostility against the Jews. He set fire to the whole city, pulled down their houses, slew many of the poor people, desecrated the temple, forbid the worship of God, destroyed the Bible, made himself a god. And although this was fulfilled historically, it is also prophetic because it will happen once again to Israel during the Great Tribulation. Antiochus IV Epiphanes was to become a type and a shadow of the coming Antichrist. Verses 32 to 35. Antiochus continued to attempt to annihilate all the Jews who continued to believe in God, but he only succeeded in contributing to their strength. For hundreds of years, there would be many exploits against the religious tyranny, especially during the period of the Maccabees. Many shall die because of their faith, but it will only serve to purify the believers even up to the time of the end. Verses 36 to 35, we have prophecy that deals specifically with the end of time. So we're going to go there right now. Let me keep an eye on the time here. So we're going to read the final chapters, verse 36 down until we'll go to the end of the chapter. At the time of the end, I know there's the division here, okay? Now suddenly it says, at the time of the end. Where do we go? We're going, let me go back up here, 37. Did we read 36 to 39?
No.
Okay, let's go back 30. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt, magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemy against the God of gods, shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done. He will regard neither the God of his father, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above them all. In their place he shall honor a god of fortresses, a god which his fathers did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge, and advance his glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, many ships. He shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape from his hand: Edom, Moab, the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries. The land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, over the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans, Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. He shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. Okay, now this, we're going to go over a little bit here on your notes, starting with verse 36. Actually, go back up, yeah. Verse 36 to 35, we have a prophecy that deals specifically with the end of time. We know that these prophecies refer to the future and not to history because, here are 6 reasons. Number 1, these prophecies from this point on have never been completely fulfilled. Secondly, the period of quote-unquote indignation refers to the period of the end. Number 3, the prophecies here are identical to those given for the coming Antichrist in 2 Thessalonians and Revelation chapter 13 and 17. Fourthly, there is a natural literary break between verses 35 and 36. Number 5, the quote-unquote willful king is a new element, separate from the king of the north or the king of the south. And sixthly, the most decisive factors that immediately follow these events is the resurrection of the dead and the final rewards. These final verses deal with the final king, final religion, and final war. Verse 36, the final king, the New Testament Antichrist. This passage is contemporaneous with the climax of chapter 2, destruction of the image, the little horn of chapter 7, and the events of Revelation chapters 6 through 19. He is an absolute ruler who does as he wills. He will exalt himself above every god, blaspheme the true God. He shall prosper until the indignation be accomplished. Verses 37 to 39, quote unquote, the gods of his fathers. Now here is something again. The gods of his fathers is a Jewish phrase, showing that this man could possibly be a Jew, thus establishing his fraudulent claims to be Messiah. So this is the one verse where many interpret the fact that the coming Antichrist could possibly be Jewish. So there is some, I can understand it, but also the way the world is going, it almost seems to lean towards the leader being out of the Muslim countries, because Islam has already said that the rider of the white horse, the Antichrist, is their Messiah. So it is quite possible that whoever this guy is might have a dual citizenship. Now, if you understand anything about the Arab community, where did the Arab community come from?
Ishmael.
Ishmael. Jewish. So people fail to understand that the Arabs and the Jews are brothers. So there is this heritage that they are relatives. This has been proved by DNA that they are linked together. And so that does answer that question. So keep in mind, this is a Jewish phrase, okay? Now the phrase desire of women is somewhat uncertain, but most believe that it refers to the birth of the Messiah as the desire of women. He will despise the true Messiah. He will reject God, establish his own God of forces, Satan, a God who his fathers knew not. There will be a complete destruction of all religions except his own. All worship will be given to him and to Satan. He will be a king of war and conquest, combination of materialism, militarism, religion, and all embodied in one ruler. Verses 40 to 45, the military struggle that will characterize the end of time. The king of the south, Egypt, as well as North Africa, those south of Israel, which have already bounded together, as well as the king of the north, which is now not just Syria, but also including those who are north, including Russia. And we took a look at that when we were in the book of Ezekiel, okay? The prominent position that Russia comes into play during the end times. These are probably the same countries, again, referred to in Ezekiel 38 and 39, that will come against him. This is a battle that is yet to be happened. It's prophesied. The Antichrist will continue to dominate, even to the controlling of Israel. He will capture Egypt, gain complete monetary control over them, including Libya and Ethiopia. The Antichrist will then hear rumors of advancing armies out of the east, and the north will trouble him. Revelation chapter 9, Revelation chapter 16. An army of 200 million will come across the Euphrates River. Okay, keep this in mind. This is the armies to the east. Red China alone boosts an army of this side. So the Bible does talk about this large army of 200 million that are going to come from the east. The Antichrist will then move his headquarters from Europe to Jerusalem. There he will fight until Messiah comes to destroy the armies. Zechariah 14, Joel chapter 3, Revelation chapter 19. Taken as a whole, Daniel 11, verses 36 to 45, becomes a description of the closing days of time for the Gentiles, specifically the Great Tribulation, which is world ruler, world religion, and materialistic philosophy. What do you guys think? Any comments? What's your comments? What's going on right now over there? You've been following the news at all? Right now, Jews from all over the world are flocking back to Israel right now to fight. And it was all over the news this morning. Planes are being loaded. They're flying them in. They're just by the thousands. It's our homeland. We're defending our homeland. Netanyahu is holding up. You've seen the records, right? Netanyahu has been giving them how many days warning? Leave Gaza. Leave northern Gaza. We are going to destroy it. Please leave, leave. What is Hamas telling the people?
They're killing the people on their way south.
Okay. Number one, they're telling, don't leave, don't leave. Meanwhile, as the Palestinians are trying to leave, Hamas is killing their own people. In fact, there was that evidence this morning on the news they showed. And they're blaming Israel for it. And if you know anything about history, this has gone on over and over throughout history, where the Palestinians have posted videos of themselves killing their own people. And what's happening right now, Palestinians are trying to leave, and Hamas will not let them. At the same time, here's the other thing. This is what's interesting. If you know anything about the Palestinian history, first of all, there's no such country, no such history, they don't exist, okay? This goes back to Yasser Arafat, if you know history, who was kicked out of Egypt with all his criminals. There's not a single Arab country that wanted them. Now, keep this in mind. The Arabs don't want them. What does Israel do? Yeah, that's no problem. We'll take care of you. And they have. And now they want to leave. You know who won't take them? The Arabs won't take them. Yeah, they don't want them. We don't want them. Now, number one, I don't blame them. They're a bunch of terrorists. But yeah, Egypt closed their borders. And there's not another Arab country that wants anything to do with the Palestinians. And so you got to understand what's going on here. And now Netanyahu this morning, he's holding off. They're holding off. He said, we're coming in. His literal words were, we're going to completely eliminate Hamas. This means hundreds, thousands of tanks, aircraft, they got everything there. They're going to go across the border, they're going to wipe the place out. Humanitarily, they're saying, please, please leave. And meanwhile, Palestine, look, they're killing our kids. What, you see what they've done to the kids? Hamas has come in. Now, I have access to a lot of different videos, okay? Lots that they won't even show. They're not only killing babies, they're beheading them and filming them. They interviewed a lady this morning on TV who was shot 7 times by Hamas, burst into her bedroom, shot her 7 times. And she quickly on her phone called her father, who is Israeli intelligence. She hadn't spoken to him in 6 years when he separated from the mother. Immediately, he was there and rescued her, risked his own life to get his daughter out of there. So these stories more and more come as people are being rescued and hiding. It's Hamas is just, if you've seen any of the videos, I mean, they're horrific. They are horrific. I mean, what kind of people slaughters little kids and babies indiscriminately? It's satanic. And then they're decrying the fact, oh, Israel sent a bomb and killed some civilians. What are you, a bunch of idiots? So you got to understand, Hamas exists for one purpose, just like Hezbollah, for only one reason, the destruction of Israel. The Hamas leader last week said, we will not be satisfied until we take over Israel, kill every Jew, and Jerusalem belongs to us. So this is it. So the big concerns now is, as we watch literally biblical prophecy beginning to be revealed and unveiled, the question now of the world is, okay, Israel goes in. There are a lot of other nations that support Hamas and Hezbollah, like Iran and Russia. So what happens if these nations decide to step in? What do you think is going to happen? Basically, you're talking World War III. And so this is why everybody is so cautious. Iran is so, I think talk about Iran, they're like a powder keg ready to go off. They will do anything to destroy America. If you saw the news reports, when the Hamas crossed the border, they showed the video of their Iranian parliament jumping up and down, yelling, death to America, death to America. Same thing on 9/11, death to America. They just want to kill us. And so now they've got how many American hostages? And we're trying to work out the release, but they're not going to release American hostages. Why would they? They're a bargaining chip. And quite frankly, we're foolish if we start paying people. And this is the dangers over there. So there's a lot going on over there. And we got to keep it in mind. Israel, we got to keep Israel in our prayers. We have to keep them in our prayers. And I interviewed a father this morning whose son came to him and said, Dad, I'm flying out to Israel. Now, these are American Jews. They're not Israelis. They're Americans. And his father, almost in tears, was saying, I am so proud of my son. He's fighting for his heritage. And so there are a lot of even Hollywood celebrities that are Jewish. Some have gone back. And I was wondering if Gal Gadot would go back. If you know anything about her, she was part of an what do we call it, almost like a special forces type of person. Her job was infiltrating Muslim groups. She's the one who played Wonder Woman. Yeah. And so that was her job in the Israeli military. So you've got a lot of famous stars now. Some have already gone back, and so we don't know what's going to happen. So it's interesting. But I'm curious as to any of your comments. You guys got any comments at all? Mike?
It's interesting that you just were talking about this. And then we're always talking about a two-state solution. I'm like, okay, that happened. Who's going to pay for Palestine? It's not going to be the Arabs.
Okay.
So who's going to pay for everything? It's got to be Iran or Iraq. So basically, you just taking on their philosophy anyway. Yeah. So they don't want them, so two-state solution won't work.
Yeah, here's the other thing, and this is where a lot of Americans are getting fed up, and I'm not going to understand that. Let's say it does happen. Israel goes, well, first of all, if Israel devastates the place, they're going to rebuild it. And we will be there to help them. That's always been our policy. But every time there's been a war in the Middle East, who went in and rebuilt? Israel did. Who took care of all the enemy wounded? Israel did. And they still do. Every time a Palestinian is injured, they will take them and treat them in their hospitals, not charge them. This is the kind of people they are. And they will give you warnings, but if you need help, we're going to help you. And you know good and well, if they do go in and destroy most of the Gaza Strip, they're going to go in and rebuild it. They will. They'll say, listen, we're here to help you. We want peace. You know, they'll tell the people, I'll guarantee you, they will tell them, those who fled, come back. We'll let you live here and we'll help you rebuild. This is what will happen. The seriousness is if Iran gets involved, if Russia gets involved, Syria, others surrounding Lebanon. And you figure if you look at it on a map, Israel is completely surrounded by Muslim countries that hate her guts. This little strip of land. And you look at what the Muslims own, and they own everything except for that little strip of land. And for some reason, they want it. And the only reason they want it is because it belongs to the Jews, and they hate the Jews. Now, if you don't understand the reason why, that goes all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael, where Isaac was given the birthright, not Ishmael. Ishmael was the firstborn, but Ishmael was not the promised son. And this is what rubs the Arabs the wrong way. No, it's our land. God said, no, it's not your land. This is Isaac's land. And the prophecy was that Ishmael would go on, he would be a great warrior, which is what happened. And they would own a lot of property. They own more land than Israel does, Jews, but they're not satisfied. So it's this conflict that's going to continue to rage on and on and on. And it's sad to see it happening, but it is happening.
Did you read the report where Russia is in constant contact with the Hamas leader?
Russia's in contact with Hamas leader. Oh, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
It's like, you hear this, like, okay. So I'm waiting. You know what I mean? We hear all this stuff. Like, it's interesting how this can turn out to be, the coming rapture.
Yeah.
This could be given, you know what I mean? Because right now, all the people involved are not really in the Bible, or really in the Bible, just really in the mosque. But any minute, Iraq could come in, Iran could come in, Russia could come in, and just blow the whole thing open. Yeah,
and it's interesting because Russia is the one supplying all the arms.
Correct. And you figure how they're going to do it. They got no money.
Yeah, and Russia has an investment there. Mm-hmm. And the point is, if going back to Ezekiel, we do know Russia will invade Israel. And here's the point. We don't know when that battle is going to happen. The Bible is not that specific. It could happen pre-rapture or after rapture. The point is we're getting that close. All we know is that a rapture will happen before a 7-year peace treaty is signed. That's, because when that's signed, that begins the last 7 years of the tribulation, and we're gone. So, and the point is, how close are we?
I think we're a lot closer than people think we are.
Oh, yeah. It's like if you watch the scientist doomsday clock, it's just about to hit midnight. Yeah. And they're just waiting for things. And not only on top of that, now we're running out of time here, we're going long today, but you look at natural disasters. There are things on Earth that the scientists are saying are overdue, like the massive earthquakes that's going to allow California to fall off the face of the Earth. Massive volcanic eruptions that are years overdue, that will wipe out entire states and countries. So scientists are saying these things are overdue. They can happen anytime. So we're sitting here at a precipice. We're at a time when natural disasters, they say it's not possible it's going to happen. It will happen. It will happen. So we're waiting for that natural disasters. We're waiting for this great Middle East conflict to happen. All these things are right out of the Bible that's going to happen just before Jesus Christ comes again. Next week...
You got to remember that Russia's right there, too.
Oh, yeah.
So the Middle East is their backyard.
Oh, yeah. It's going to happen. So next, chapter 11, we'll finish that next week. And then, like I said, we're going to go into a series on how to really understand and interpret the Bible. I got to get my notes together on that. I haven't determined whether we'll take a week off or not. I may have to take a week off just to get all my studying done. But Brian?
I heard Allah's son converted to Christianity. I was blown away about that.
Yeah, well, the leader of, you're right. There are many Muslims that are converting, and one of them was the son of the Hamas leader. Yeah, you're right.
I was actually very happy to see that. And that's a house divided, like Jesus talks about.
Yeah.
Right now, there is a great revival going on in the Muslim community that we don't hear about. Our missionaries are telling you, and I read them as I subscribe to several newsletters about Muslims. The amount of Muslims that are having actual visions of Jesus Christ appearing to them, Muslims turning to Christ. And of course, once they do that, it's a death penalty. They have to leave. Parents write them off, and now you're considered dead, and they will actually go out of the way to kill you. And so there are Muslims now their lives are on the line because they believe in Jesus Christ as the Messiah. And so this is going on in the Muslim community. So you've got all these conflicts. Where are they all located? Middle East. You know, the birthplace of humanity, and that's where everything is going to end. Okay, guys, we got to call it quits here for right now. I've got to get over to the church. We got to get ready for a Royal Ranger thing this morning too. So I'm going to close off here and close in prayer. Actually, let's close in prayer before we go anywhere. Father, I do thank you again for this day. I thank you for these men. I thank you for their lives. Bless them, Lord. Be with them on their jobs, with their families. Keep us healthy. Lord, more than anything else, may we be strong men and be an example to our community, to our family, and our church. Go before us into the sanctuary. Your blessing upon the worship team, upon Pastor Joseph as he preaches, upon any visitors that might be there as well. Be with us. Give us a great week, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.